Well, we have now officially lived through one full week of 2023. And with a new year can come this desire for a new you, right? Many of you might be thinking or are living into already some New Year's resolutions of eating healthier or being more active or watching less Netflix or trying to spend more time with the family. And whether or not you are somebody who makes New Year's resolutions, I came across this video that I think could offer us a little bit of wisdom today as we look at this new year. So go ahead and take a look.
I have a problem with New Year's resolutions, not because they often fail or because they're too difficult, and not because I'm bad at them either. I mean, I've only been in love for 4 New Years. No, I have a problem with resolutions because people think that that's it. It's the wrong time to change. Now, don't get me wrong, we definitely all need change. I have no idea how to ride a bicycle. I know, but I have no idea what a toilet is for. And thank you. Yeah, you probably should get out of the house more, but one big decision probably isn't going to do it. Sorry. So now what? Flush your resolutions down the toilet for one my little brother can't use? Of course not. Keep your resolutions, but go easy on yourself. Will you change? Maybe, but probably won't make one big moment. It'll happen in thousands of little moments. Every time you choose to forgive or slow down or be grateful or stay calm, even a moment that you choose what's right instead of what's easy. Faith instead of doubt, love instead of hate. That's where the change happens. Even if you fail 1 or 2 or 30 times, it's okay. You've got thousands of more little moments ahead of you. You'll get better. So happy New Year, God bless, and I'm off to ask my dad to get a bike, even though a pony. Bye!
Cute, but because she offers, I think, a little wisdom, right? When it comes to New Year's resolutions, not just one big decision, but it's those little decisions that we get to make every single day. But today, I actually want to take this video one step further, because when we think about real, sustainable change in our lives, I wonder if there's something else we need to consider, and not just our decisions. Because when we think about just our decisions, we often think about our own willpower or our ability to change ourselves. We think like, if only I could just motivate myself to get off the couch and move more, or if only I could have self-control and not eat 12 Christmas cookies every day, or if only I could have more control over my schedule and be able to spend more time with my family, right? If only, if only, if only. And we think about our willpower in making change in our lives. But for any of you who've made a decision like that before, you know how quickly our willpower can fail. I was stopped by the West Shore YMCA this weekend, and it was packed. I had never seen so many cars in there, right? So how many people, they signed up for the gym membership in January, and I asked the staff there, I'm like, how long is it going to be this busy? They're like, give it 3 weeks, and they'll be back to normal. You know, when we just depend on our willpower, that's what happens. And I think every story of profound, sustained life change that I've ever encountered, it doesn't actually come down to willpower, but it comes down to surrender. It's very counterintuitive to us in our culture, where we want to pick ourselves up by our own bootstraps, but I actually think surrender is at the heart of real change in our lives. As we've been working through this Character of Christmas sermon series, we talked about all sorts of different people who surrendered and their lives were never the same. We talked about Isaiah, who surrendered to become a prophet, who would even provide a message or words about Jesus, the coming Messiah. We talked about Elizabeth and Zacharias surrendering to become the parents of John the Baptist who would prepare the way for Jesus. We talked about Mary and Joseph surrendering to become the earthly parents of Jesus and how their lives were never the same. We even mentioned Nicky Cruz, who was once this notorious gangster who surrendered to Jesus in his life and became known as the Billy Grahams of the streets. That surrender is important to sustained life change in our lives. And so today, on this Epiphany Sunday, I wanted to look at one more of the characters of Christmas whose story I think embodies what surrender could look like for us in this new year. So if you have your Bibles with you, or the words will be on the screen, this story comes to us out of Matthew chapter 2, beginning in verse 1. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the child who's been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all of Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and the scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem in Judea. For so it has been written by the prophet, 'And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people, Israel.'" Then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, so that I too may go and worship him." When they had heard the king, they sent out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. This famous story of the wise men, or sometimes we refer to them as the Magi, begins by saying they were from the east, which is really code word saying they were from Persia. And most likely these Magi, these wise men, were advisors to the king of Persia. And as such, they were trained in disciplines like philosophy and medicine and astrology. So it was literally part of their job to keep track of the stars. And one night they saw this bright, brilliant star appear in the sky, and they knew that God was breaking into the earth to show them something new. And it was such a bright and brilliant star, they believed it had to signify that a king had been born. And so through their research, they believed it was the King of the Jews that had been born. So these wise men packed up their belongings to make the long, costly trek from Persia all the way to Jerusalem. Because where would you expect to find the King of the Jews? Nowhere else but in Jerusalem. So they make this long, costly journey to Jerusalem, only to realize they're not finding the king there. And so they meet with King Herod and his priests and scribes to say, "Hey, we saw this star. We think it's for the King of the Jews, but where is this King of the Jews?" And they meet together and say, "Actually, the king you're looking for is to be born in Bethlehem." So they travel from Jerusalem to Bethlehem and finally find the house over which the star was, and see Mary and Joseph and Jesus. And as they see Jesus, these grown, wealthy, powerful, educated, elite men from the East fall down and worship Jesus. And for me, this story is such a powerful image of surrender. That they were willing to give all that they were and all that they had and place that at the feet of Jesus. That they would make this long and costly trek. That they would give these expensive gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. And I think for us, the wise men paint a picture of what surrender can look like in our lives. I mean, I like to think about it. If I were a wise man, would I have done that? Would I have packed up and left my comfortable life in Persia to make this long trek to Jerusalem and then to Bethlehem? Would I have used my talents to search for this new king? Would I have surrendered this precious treasure? Would I have knelt before this tiny king? Or would my knees have locked in pride? What would my posture have been if I were one of those wise men? And so I think it's powerful for us to consider, what does surrender look like for us in 2023? Maybe it looks like what those wise men did. Maybe surrender looks like surrendering our time to say, yes, Jesus, you're in control of my day, of my calendar, of my month, of this year. I surrender my time to you. Maybe it looks like surrendering our talents. That's what the wise men did. They surrendered their talents to search for this king. And we can say, Jesus, this year I give you all the skills and the gifts and abilities that you've given to me anyway. I surrender them to you. You're in control of my life this year. Or maybe it looks like surrendering our treasure, of our resource. And we say, God, you're in charge of what I save, of what I spend, of what I do with the finances that you've given to me. I surrender all that I am and all that I have to you. And when I picture those wise men kneeling in front of Jesus, it makes me think of another posture, the posture that we sometimes take in prayer. And I wonder if that is where surrender begins for us this year, that we get to daily surrender to Jesus in prayer. That maybe it's one of the first things we do when we get out of bed, or we get on our knees, or we take whatever posture of surrender that we can, and we say, Jesus, you're in control of my life today, of this month, of this year. I surrender all that I am and all that I have to you. And it's a daily reminder that as much as we like to think that we're in control and that we can pick ourselves up by our own bootstraps, it's a daily reminder to surrender to God's leading in our lives. I read a story once about a girl who was whitewater rafting. Her name was Christy Sweetland. She happened to be whitewater rafting in northern New Mexico on the Rio Grande Gorge. It was a 6-hour adventure that she was on, and the first 3 hours were relatively calm. But halfway through the whitewater rafting adventure, the rapids got much more intense. In fact, she said the water turned murderous. That's how violent it was. And she was terrified, and so she's gripping onto her paddle with full strength. She's clenching her teeth. She's in pain just because of how tightly she's holding onto her paddle. But yet behind her in the raft, she could feel the energy of her guide. That was so different from her clenching and holding on. The guide was so relaxed and fluid. It was like he'd become the river as they were going through the rapids. And so as they approached the next set of rapids, Kristen decided to give it a try. To try to relax and to follow the advice of the guide, but just to allow whatever happened to happen. And as she did that, time and time again, she made it through the rapids. It wasn't always in the way that she thought she would get through, but safely she would make it through each section of the rapids until the adventure was over. Church, I think that's what surrender looks like in our lives. That we get to surrender to the great advice of Jesus, the guide in our lives. That we don't have to clench and hang on so tightly and try to muscle through and try to remain in control. But that we get to let go and daily remind ourselves that God is in control, not us. And surrender our time, our talents, our treasure, all that we all are and all that we have to God. That this year may be a year of surrender that changes everything for us. Let's pray.